Well, good morning, and call the meeting to order. Please join me in prayer. Heavenly Father, we ask for guidance this morning, for wisdom, as we consider programs that affect folks who are in need or need assistance. We ask for the wisdom and understanding that those needs and patience with each other as we consider our respective positions with this. But most of all, wisdom and discernment to know what's the right answer. Bless this hearing now and us to your service. We ask these things in Jesus' name. Amen. I want to welcome our witnesses today to the, well, I guess I need to ask the formal hearing. The hearing today of the Committee of Agriculture regarding the past, present, and future of SNAP, focusing on the world of nutrition and the role of the charitable sector, will come to order. I want to welcome our witnesses to today's hearing and thank them for taking time to travel here to share their perspectives and answers to our questions on how the charitable sector plays a vital role in providing food assistance to families in need. Today is about hearing from the folks on the ground, practitioners in the field. They will provide us with their first-person accounts of what is working and not working as we continue to explore the past, present, and future of SNAP. We proceed today without any preconceived notions and with a commitment to strengthen the program so it can serve as a tool to help individuals and families move up the economic ladder. Today, we'll also begin a new phase of the review, which is to explore the world of nutrition that surrounds SNAP, formerly known as a supplemental, and I want to emphasize the word supplemental, nutrition assistance program. Addressing the nutritional needs of Americans is not solely the responsibility of SNAP. The program does not operate in a vacuum. Instead, there is a web of government programs, charitable organizations, and others working toward a common goal. From churches to community organizations to corporate philanthropy, local food banks, these not-for-profits and others are deeply rooted in their communities and serve as important partners in the delivery of critical food assistance across the country. Understanding SNAP's interaction with these organizations will help to maximize the effectiveness of all organizations involved, government and non-government, and better target limited resources by identifying both unmet needs and areas of overlap. Contrary to the picture painted by many, SNAP benefits are designed to be supplemental, leaving households reasonably responsible for the remaining needs. Many do so with help of local organizations such as the West Texas Food Bank, which annually serves more than 75,000 individuals with 3.6 million meals through their various partner organizations. Individuals and organizations that highlight the SNAP benefit level in a manner that misrepresents the idea that it is a supplemental is less supplemental, is more than supplemental, is both confusing and disingenuous. While the issue of hunger deserves our thoughtful consideration, misleading the general public to draw attention to it should be considered unacceptable. A successful solution for nutrition assistance is the responsibility of government and the charitable sector, a combination of the two working together. Charitable organizations have greater flexibility to address the needs of their specific communities in ways that the federal government is often not able to do so by being accountable to the family in need and not to the government program. Charitable organizations have strong community ties and often operate programs on the government's behalf. For many of these organizations, food assistance is only part of their mission as it's seen as a means and not just as an end. We all want to address hunger in America. To do that, we must focus on serving individuals and families in need and less on who or what is providing assistance. The organizations we will hear from today are doing just that, and there's a great deal to learn. I look forward to hearing from our witnesses today as we explore how charitable organizations augment the federal nutrition program and the delivery of critical food assistance across the country. And with that, I'll now ask the ranking member if he has a statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for holding this hearing today. As I've said, I think it's beneficial for the committee to learn as much as we can about SNAP while resisting attempts to open up the Farm Bill or separate SNAP from the Farm Bill. I am very supportive of the work done by local food banks and other charitable organizations across the country. They not only offer food, but important outreach services to help those in need. However, they do not have the funding, capacity, or flexibility to fully replace SNAP, as some might suggest. Hopefully today's hearing will help the committee get a better understanding of how charities and nonprofits work with programs like SNAP, and I'm looking forward to any suggestions our witnesses might have about improvements we could make to ensure those programs are operating as efficiently as possible. One area I'd be interested in exploring is making more produce available at food banks. Farmers often have a disincentive to donate due to high packing and transportation costs, and if they do have them, agencies have a tough time getting perishable products out before they go bad. Growing the partnership between food banks and farmers could help this. I hope this will be a productive hearing and we can continue looking past the rhetoric and learning more about this important program, and I thank the chair for the hearing and the witnesses for appearing. I yield back.
Thank you, gentlemen. The chair would request that other members submit their opening statements for the record so the witnesses may begin their testimony and to ensure that there's ample time for questions. I'd like to welcome our witnesses to the table today, to our panel today. First off, we have Kate Maghr, the CEO of Greater Chicago Food Depository from Chicago, Illinois. Ms. Kelly Green-Patton, Chicago's Community Kitchens from Chicago, Illinois. Mr. Dustin Kuntz, Salesforce Administrator and Research Project Manager for the Texas Hunger Initiative in Waco, Texas. Ms. Linda Taylor Ender, AGE Director, the Senior Source, Dallas, Texas. Good morning. And Mr. Jonathan Webb, Director of Foundations and Community Outreach with the Feed the Children Foundation in Edmond, Oklahoma. Ms. Maghr, the microphone is yours, and please begin your testimony when you're ready.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Kate Maghr, and I'm the Executive Director and CEO of the Greater Chicago Food Depository. I'm honored to be here representing food banks and agencies that respond daily to hunger across our nation. Thank you so much for this opportunity. The Food Depository is one of 200 food banks in Feeding America's national network. Together, we serve more than 46 million people through 58,000 food pantries, soup kitchens, shelters, and programs. Every day, food banks source and distribute millions of pounds of food. Last year, our collective output neared 4 billion pounds. We do this with the generosity of supporters from all sectors, including leading food companies, retailers, farmers, corporate funders, and generous individuals. USDA commodities from TFAP and CSFP are also a critical source of food for our network, and we thank you for the TFAP increase in the 2014 Farm Bill. In addition, we have special programs to reach food-insecure children, seniors, and veterans. We engage in SNAP outreach to help connect eligible people, and because we know that a job is often the best solution to food insecurity, many of us, including the Food Depository, have workforce development programs. Still, millions of low-income households with working adults and those who are unable to work struggle to put food on their table. That is why we advocate for strong federal nutrition programs. Our goal is to end hunger in our communities. Achieving that goal requires a coordinated public-private response. We are proud of our daily impact, but frankly, it pales in comparison to the job done by programs such as SNAP, WIC, CACFP, school lunch and breakfast, and summer meals. When the Great Recession hit, the demand for food assistance increased dramatically. In Cook County, Illinois, we experienced a 70% rise in food pantry visits over 5 years. Each week, community food pantries and church basement soup kitchens saw new faces walk through their doors. And while the need has plateaued in many communities, it has not receded. Food banks are incredibly proud of how we have risen to meet this need. We are proud of the donors and volunteers who embody the American value of service and who have kept millions of people from going hungry. But charity did not do this alone. During this era of increased need, federal nutrition programs, especially SNAP, did exactly what they were created to do. When our country experienced its most drastic economic crisis since the Great Depression, SNAP grew to meet the need. But as SNAP expanded, so have misconceptions about the program. In 2013, 43% of SNAP recipients lived in a household with an employed adult. At the same time, 82% of SNAP benefits went to households that include children, seniors, or people with disabilities. Every day, the SNAP program and food banks work in tandem. Among the households that we serve, 55% receive SNAP, but with an average of less than $5 per person per day, benefits often run out before the month's end. For these families, and for those who do not meet SNAP eligibility guidelines, food banks are there. If SNAP funding were cut further, or if unnecessary restrictions were placed on the programs, food banks would not be able to fill the void. Together, we have the ability to end hunger in America. Every day, food banks like the Food Depository strive to do more. We strive to offer more job training, expand programs for veterans, provide fresh produce to food deserts, and ensure that every child is fed during the summer. But we can only do this because the federal nutrition programs are in place and our role is supplementary. We understand and appreciate the difficult task that our elected officials have to balance the budget, but the budget should not be balanced on the backs of our most vulnerable neighbors. On behalf of the Greater Chicago Food Depository, Feeding America, our partner agencies, and the people we serve, thank you for your time and your attention. I urge you, protect SNAP and other critical nutrition programs in ongoing budget negotiations, and I invite and encourage you to visit your local food bank and see firsthand the amazing work that they do. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Green-Patton. Ms. Green-Patton.
My name is Kelly Green-Patton, and I am a product of SNAP. Recently, I was promoted to a position that I believe represents a full circle moment in my life. As I think about my humble beginnings, I realize how far I've come. My sister and I grew up in a single-parent home. My mother worked full-time as a secretary. It didn't pay much, but she did the best that she could. She made sure that we were very active in free programs like music classes and gymnastics. My sister and I didn't know that she could barely keep food in the house. My mom received food stamps, which is the equivalent of SNAP at the time, the kind that you tear out of the booklet. She was big on fruits and vegetables, and so we always had that stuff at home. She always insisted fresh was better, but we never knew how much she struggled to feed us. We never knew it cost more to purchase an apple than to purchase a pack of noodles. But my mom knew, and so she did the best that she could with what she had. When the stamps ran out in the middle of the month, we visited our local church for food baskets. Now, my sister and I were really excited to get whatever was in the box because they always had something special for us. We would carry the items home proudly as if we had just come from the grocery store. But as a teenager, I became increasingly embarrassed about going to the church for food or paying for the groceries with the paper stamps. If I saw my friends that I knew at the store, I would wait until they left before I completed my purchase. And if they didn't leave, I would pretend that I left my money at home, thus leaving the purchase behind. Years later, I found myself as a single mother of two. At different times over 4 years, I needed stamps to feed my children. I was very diligent about finding work. As a matter of fact, I ended up with both a full-time and a part-time job to make ends meet. And I was able to stop collecting SNAP benefits. I really needed my girls to see that hard work pays off, but I struggled, as many others, just to keep food on the table, even with 2 jobs. Later, I married and had 2 more children, and we were doing well in our 2-parent, 2-income family. We still lived paycheck to paycheck, but there was no need for assistance. We were happy and proud working Americans, but little more than 11 years ago, I lost my $12 an hour job when the candy factory I worked at closed. I searched hard for any job, but I only had a high school diploma, no college or special training. That's when I applied for Chicago's Community Kitchens, which is a workforce development program at the Greater Chicago Food Depository, and my life has never been the same since. The program gave me culinary skills and the confidence I needed to start a new career. But while the program had no monetary cost for me, I was still without income while I trained full-time for 3 months. To supplement the lack of income, the only thing I could do was to go back and apply for food stamps. We received about $400 a month for a family of 6. When the stamps ran out, my local church was kind enough to give us food baskets. It was just enough to bridge the gap before the end of the month. I didn't understand it when I was a teenager, but I understand now how important these benefits were and are to families like mine. I never wanted to be on food stamps, but when I look back on it today, I am so blessed that it was there when I needed it. It's now 10 years later. I'm still happily married with 4 children. After graduating from Chicago's community kitchens, I gained immediate employment and eventually purchased my first home within that year. My career continued to advance when I started working in school food service. As I settled into my new position of district manager for the state of Illinois for Chartwell School Food Service, I'm proud to say not only can I afford to feed my family, but we always have nutritious food in the house. I can even afford to send my babies to college. I work for a great company whose philosophy is eat, learn, live, and I've had the opportunity to pay it forward in several ways. I've been able to offer internships and jobs to many of the Chicago's Community Kitchens graduates. On a monthly basis, where I am the associate pastor at my church, I started a free hot meal program to anyone in the community that needs it. I'm so blessed and thankful to have the opportunity to testify you before today. As a child, food stamps kept me and my sister from going hungry. As an adult, food stamps allowed me to feed my children while I invested in my own future. Many people call SNAP a safety net, but for me it was like a trampoline, just able to bounce my family back into work and a brighter future. I'm so proud to represent the millions of families across the United States who have benefited from SNAP, and on behalf of households who need SNAP, now and in the future, I ask you to protect this important program. Thank you for hearing my story.
Well, Kelly, thank you for sharing that with us. That's, you've made my day, so thank you very much. Mr. Coons.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Conaway, Ranking Member Peterson, and members of the committee, for the invitation to share about how statewide public-private partnerships are assisting low-income Texans in obtaining needed benefits, including SNAP. My name is Dustin Coons, and I'm a research manager for Baylor University's Texas Hunger Initiative, a collaborative and capacity-building project engaged in research and community development to create a food-secure Texas. I previously served as an AmeriCorps Vista and United States Marine. I'm an ordained minister and a veteran of Operation Iraqi Freedom. Complex problems require complex, creative, and collaborative solutions. Public challenges, such as food insecurity, require a response that exceeds the capabilities and resources of any one department, organization, or jurisdiction. Collaboration provides a way to stretch those resources and accomplish more with less. And benefits of these partnerships include cost savings and enhanced quality and quantity of services, while also addressing community needs, enhancing trust, and increasing citizen support. In Texas, the Health and Human Services Commission administers SNAP. To reach the entire state, they would either need to spend an incredible amount of money to maintain offices and staff and technology, or else sacrifice access to some of our most vulnerable residents. Instead, a forward-looking Texas legislature has engaged the help of nearly 1,200 organizations to provide application assistance. Partners include faith-based organizations, childhood intervention programs, libraries, hospitals, schools and colleges, and domestic violence shelters. And now approximately 60% of SNAP-eligible Texans can reach out to a partner in their zip code to apply, recertify, and, when things improve, withdraw from SNAP with the help of community members, all at an incredibly low cost to the state and federal government. There are 2 partnership levels. At self-service sites, a computer is made available to the public and the online portal is readily accessible. For those that need additional support, we have application assistance sites where citizens can work with a staff member or volunteer called a navigator who's actually been trained to assist in the application process. This reduces errors in applications, saving the government time and money, while also promptly providing resources to the Texans who need them the most, and it utilizes existing charitable structures to decrease the need for so many physical government offices. The Texas Hunger Initiative performs three key roles here: implementation, translation, and evaluation. THI has helped to implement this program through our 12 regional offices, where we recruit, train, and support these partners, with whom we have relationships, making it possible for us to interact on a level unattainable by a government agency. We translate the language of government programs to the nonprofit world and, conversely, translate nonprofit to government agencies. And finally, using data from the state and the field, Baylor University evaluates the effectiveness of these public-private partnerships to develop evidence-informed best practices. Under the old system, when a Texan needed a hand, they would usually take a shift off of work, which cost them about a third of the monthly SNAP allotment, to spend hours in a government office for an interview and a paper application that Texas would later have to pay someone to digitize. Under the partnership I've described today, a citizen can call a minister at a local church and express the need for help. They schedule a time that doesn't interfere with the applicant's job, and the minister can share the myriad ways the church helps folks. If the individual chooses to apply for public benefits, the minister is trained to assist. Now, in the end, using either system, the individual is going to receive aid. But unlike the eligibility worker, whose primary concerns are compliance and qualification calculations, the minister understands public benefits within the greater continuum of care in that congregation. Independently, the public and private sectors can do a great deal for economically vulnerable Americans. But when they're working together, like we are in Texas, there's a much greater impact. We see increased efficiency of service. We see enhanced community capacity to address these and other local issues. And most importantly, the citizens who most need benefits and services have access to them. Agencies can efficiently execute programs, but staff and volunteers working in communities can put those programs in perspective, seeing them as part of the whole, and as a crucial but intermediate step along the path to self-sufficiency, moving people from a place of vulnerability to a place of flourishing. Thank you. I look forward to any questions you'll have.
Thank you, Mr. Koontz. Ms. Ender.
Chairman Conaway and members of the Committee on Agriculture, thank you for inviting me to speak on how one nonprofit agency in Dallas, Texas, is engaging in a public-private partnership to provide SNAP benefits to older adults. My name is Linda Taylor Ender, and I am the Age Director at the Senior Source, a nonprofit agency that has served older adults in the greater Dallas area for over 50 years. Our mission is to improve the quality of life of older adults through protection, elder care, advocacy, volunteerism, and employment services. While the majority of our clients are of lesser means, many of our programs provide services to all economic levels. We are members of the Dallas Coalition for Hunger Solutions, which has a senior hunger action team that is working on increasing senior participation in SNAP and attendance at congregate meal sites. In 15 years, adults over 60 years of age will make up more than 20% of the population in Texas. That means 1 in 5 walking the mall will be over 60. The growth is a worry because currently 9% of seniors in Dallas County live below the poverty line, and 57% of eligible seniors are not receiving SNAP. Why aren't eligible seniors applying for SNAP? Well, many do not realize the program exists or that they might be eligible. They may not see themselves as poor. For some, there is a stigma attached to accepting government assistance. Some seniors believe it would be too difficult to apply or believe the myth that they would only get $7, so it's not worth applying. A lack of transportation and a complicated application process can be deterrents. As a community partner, the Senior Source is certified by the Texas Health and Human Services Commission to provide assistance to people interested in accessing benefits. The SNAP application is complicated and confusing even for professionals. Our elder support program staff have been specially trained to navigate the online application, and they have access to support help when they need it. When an older adult contacts our agency for any kind of assistance, we try to help them with any emergency need they have first, like food from our small pantry. Next, we'll ask them, would they like to make an appointment to see if we can assist them further? Usually they will. When they come for the appointment, we evaluate if the person could qualify for SNAP or any other benefits. Our social workers allow an hour and a half to work with an individual on completing a SNAP application. We access emergency SNAP for many applicants. They can get help in less than a week. Most of our applicants are approved for a year because their income does not change. Most of our clients who apply for SNAP are awarded between $16 and $194 a month. The majority of our clients are women, and their age range is 60 to 90. An example of a client would be a 70-year-old woman who contacted the senior source requesting assistance. Her husband had recently died, and her income had been reduced to $970 a month. She was having a difficult time paying her rent, utilities, purchasing food, and medications. Staff determined that she was eligible for SNAP. She was awarded $194 a month in SNAP benefits. This resulted in a yearly savings of $2,328. While this does not address the fact that her income is still less than $12,000 a year, this will help ensure that she has access to healthy food. Every day we see what occurs when an older adult does not have enough healthy food to eat. Without good nutrition, they're more prone to illnesses and falls, are more likely to show signs of mental confusion, and be victims of financial or physical abuse. For these reasons, they may lose their ability to live independently. There is a very real need for community partners and navigators because the application is confusing to older adults, the notices are confusing, and they feel more comfortable going to a trusted organization in their community for assistance. Thank you again for the opportunity to talk to you about how the Senior Source assists older adults with the SNAP application process through a public-private partnership.
Thank you, Ms. Zinder. Mr. Webb.
Chairman Conaway, Ranking Member Peterson, members of the committee, it is truly an honor to be among my colleagues today to testify on SNAP and the role of nonprofits in addressing hunger in the United States. Thank you for the opportunity to share about our work and offer insight into how nonprofits and government can strengthen our vital collaboration. Also, thank you to my fellow witnesses from the Texas Hunger Initiative, Texas Community Partner Program, the Greater Chicago Food Depository, and Ms. Green-Patton for coming to the table to share your experience and shed light on both the nexus of the federal nutrition safety net and the necessary role of nonprofits. My name is Jonathan Webb. I'm a Director of Foundation and Community Engagement with Feed the Children. Feed the Children is based in Oklahoma City. We are one of the largest anti-hunger organizations in the United States. We are 99% privately funded, with less than 1% of our funds coming from federal government resources. Half of our programming occurs in 18 countries internationally, while the other half occurs domestically in the U.S. One of our strengths is our network of 1,200 partner agencies. The majority of the people that we serve are enrolled in SNAP or some other form of federal nutrition assistance. We applaud the Congress for upholding SNAP in the 2014 Farm Bill and for investing in new, innovative demonstration projects on both childhood hunger and SNAP employment and training. SNAP is an invaluable resource and a strong safety net for the children and families we serve. Without it, hunger in America would be much, much worse. While we strongly support the value of SNAP as a tool, we believe it should not be the only tool. Having international and domestic operations provides Feed the Children with a unique vantage point. Globally, both child deaths and absolute poverty have decreased by 50% since 1990. We believe this to be due to collective impact. Hunger is a complex issue with many underlying causes, which include poverty, education, unemployment, and health. This means that no one organization can address the issue alone. Internationally, the development approach is one that leverages existing community assets while collectively building the foundational elements to transform a community and move it from its current situation. Domestically, while the war on poverty has had great strides, poverty still exists. In the United States, our approach to anti-hunger lacks collaboration, and it does not always address the underlying causes of hunger. This is not due to groups not willing to work together or not understanding the issue. The issue is that sometimes, often, the available funding sources don't incentivize collaboration. The role of nonprofits in the domestic fight against hunger should be as a collaborator, an innovator, and an evaluator. Given the complexity of the hunger issue, we need an all-hands-on-deck approach that allows nonprofits and a cross-sector of players to serve as an incubator, giving us the freedom to test innovative solutions, the flexibility to fail, and in the process, find transformative solutions that can be measured for impact and ultimately scaled up. We believe the government is in a position to encourage collaboration around these three roles. Therefore, we make the following three recommendations. One, we recommend that Congress use existing resources to create the Food Insecurity and Nutrition Social Innovation Fund. This will promote collaboration among nonprofits, community leaders, faith groups, and academics, and would allow us to collectively create, identify, and scale up those programs and models and the policies that decrease the number of people who need the safety net instead of just trying to improve the safety net. It also creates an opportunity for anti-hunger organizations to share best practices more efficiently. Second, we recommend that Congress focus on funding for nonprofits working collaboratively on demonstration projects that test innovative approaches to improving food insecurity and administering federal nutrition programs. Last, we recommend that Congress require an impact measurement of programs using food security and nutrition indicators to determine progress towards a larger goal. Again, we thank you for the opportunity to be part of today's hearing. Feed the Children is committed to creating a world where no child goes to bed hungry. We welcome the dialogue and hope to be a part of this ongoing conversation. Thank you.
Well, thank you, and thank all of our witnesses for sharing with us today. This is one of the better, first off, you all finished within the 5-minute time frame, each one of you. That's spectacular. But thank you for being here today and getting us off to a great start on a conversation about a tough topic. The chair would remind members that they will be recognized for questioning in order of seniority for the members who were here at the start of the hearing. After that, members will be recognized in order of arrival, and I appreciate our members' understanding of that, and I recognize myself for 5 minutes. Ms. Green-Patton, thank you for being here today and coming to D.C. to share your very inspirational story. I loved your line about the safety, trampoline rather than a safety net, yes, and for sharing with us how the temporary program weaved its way in and out of your life and help you get to where you are today. Can you talk to us a little bit more about why you continue to stay involved in the community kitchens and why you mentioned a little bit about paying it forward, but can you flesh that out a little bit with, in a couple of minutes?
Yes. I received so much from the Greater Chicago Food Depository. It was more than just, here's a fish, eat it. It was, let me show you how to fish, let me show you how to cook it, let me show you how to purchase it, let me show you how to share it. And so I can't help but to give back to what they've given to me. You know, the program, the Chicago's Community Kitchens, is a free program for us. They give us everything that we need to be successful in the culinary field and even outside the culinary field. And so I feel like I just owe, I owe them back. I'm just so grateful for everything that they've done for me, the mentorship, the resources. They've never left me alone, and I came out of this program over 10 years ago.
Well, thank you again for being here this morning and sharing that with us. Mr. Koontz, on your, you use the word navigator for your folks that you work as well. That term got a little tainted with the Obamacare navigators. Are they the same people? They're different folks just using the same name, or what is the, what's the link between those two?
Chairman Conaway, they are not necessarily the same people. While it's certainly possible that somebody could be doing both,
Okay.
Our Navigator program is in no way associated with healthcare plan.
I got you. Can you talk to us about how your comments about the state winning with fewer errors, less overhead, and an engagement of a group of folks who look not just at hunger in that narrow vision, but they're looking at the needs of the entire person sitting in front of them as they go through that, and how that may improve the process versus what someone who's talking to them just about the nutrition needs?
Certainly. Thank you. That's a great question. It's a complex question. I want to make sure I get to every part of it. Firstly, on the state efficiency side, as I mentioned, Texas is big. I mean, it's really big. It's 269,000 square miles, and we have about 5.3 million Texans that are eligible for SNAP. And so to have offices everywhere is incredibly difficult for HHSC. What the initial savings, obviously, is just that the partners are in so many locations. Having almost 1,200 partners means that we don't need HHSC locations all over the place. As far as the application themselves, applications that are performed by individuals tend to have more errors. Remember, applications have a lot of particular program jargon that navigators are able to assist with and kind of explain. So we see fewer applications, and the process of kicking back applications to be corrected and then having them forwarded back and forth, that process is a lot quicker and saves a lot of time for the state and for the individual. As far as the way that churches and nonprofits in the area are able to see beyond just the benefits programs that are available, for instance, at the congregation I am part of, we have a whole set of resources and a set of ways that we address hunger and poverty in our community. And so some of those things include things like food pantries and other food assistance, food recovery, and soup kitchens, that kind of thing. But also access to other resources in the area. We have a great relationship with other nonprofits in the area that are able to address many of these needs. And so, whereas for a state office, I think that benefits are the kind of the goal of that office, when an individual goes to a nonprofit or a congregation, they're able to see a whole wealth of options, a whole wealth of needs, and able to see a person, not an application, and that puts things in perspective of the entire continuum.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Webb. I'm curious on measuring things. Ms. Maghr a while ago mentioned millions of pounds of food. That doesn't translate into meaningful information other than it's just a lot. Can you talk to us a little bit about metrics that you're using that you see that do work that's beyond just the pounds or the dollars that are spent?
So actually, thank you, Chairman. Domestically, we're working on a solution to that with the USDA, trying to identify ways to better track how we're moving people out of their current situations. Internationally, the work that we're doing demonstrates an understanding that hunger, as I mentioned in my testimony, has several layers around poverty, employment, education, and health. So some of the things that we track overseas are things like stunting and livelihood development, so how many people are able to get jobs. So those type of things are ways to track and understand how people are moving out of their current situation. We realize that while providing food and millions of pounds of food is essential, it doesn't necessarily tell us a story about whether or not we're moving people from one place to the next. So that's what we're working on now.
All right, thank you very much. Again, thank the panel. Ranking member, 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman. Colleen Moriarty with the Hunger-Free Minnesota says that food banks need more food, especially high-quality fresh produce. And one of their initiatives is to promote working with farmers directly on limiting waste through ag surplus initiatives. In addition, Feeding America is advocating an expansion of federal tax credits for farmers who donate food. Some states like Iowa already do this, but there isn't a national tax credit, I guess, at the present time. So, Ms. Maghr, in Minnesota, food banks have been able to stock their shelves with food from a variety of state-based manufacturers like Cargill and General Mills, along with grocery chains, but there seems to be an obvious role for farmers to help stock food banks' shelves by donating their surplus. Have you had any experience working directly with farmers to encourage them to give otherwise wasted commodities to your food bank? And is there anything Congress can do to help simplify the relationship between farmers and food banks? And what can you tell me about the tax credits that are currently available to farmers who donate their products?
Thank you so much for the question, and I will tell you, first of all, that my colleagues in the state of Minnesota are amazing, and we try every day to be more like them in Illinois and all across this country. We do have strong partnerships with farmers in the state of Illinois, but it is a challenge, and it's one that all of the food banks in this country are really working towards. Frankly, that's why the food donation tax credit is so important to food banks in this country, because there are farmers that are our partners in this work. They see the face of hunger in their own communities. They want to be a part of the response, but when it costs them more to donate than it does to not harvest or take that food to a landfill, it doesn't make business sense for them. Food banks today appreciate, and frankly, all of us are striving to distribute more fresh produce. In the case of my own food bank, of the 67 million pounds of food that we distributed last year, 34% was fresh fruits and vegetables. Farmers, the agriculture community, they are our partners in this work, but we need a food donation tax credit that provides them with the same support that the food industry gets, so that together we can make sure that there is fresh, quality food available for all of the people turning to food banks in this country.
I assume that you probably take a donation or a deduction for a donation, in-kind donation, which you can do for a lot of different things. I assume you can probably do that now, but you're talking about a tax credit. Is there actually a bill, or are there a specific proposal,
so
what this tax credit would be?
The food donation tax credit currently is not positioned in a way that most farmers in this country can take advantage of.
Yeah, well, right. They'd have to do it on their personal return, probably.
Correct.
But is the tax credit, is there an actual proposal, a bill that's been introduced on this tax credit?
This is the deduction that was passed by the House, and we're hoping that your colleagues in the Senate will do the right thing.
So there's a tax credit bill that passed the House? What?
It was the America Gives More Act.
It was what?
The America Gives More Act.
Oh, okay. What is the tax credit? How is it structured?
It's the tax deduction, sorry.
It's a deduction?
Yes.
Off of their Schedule F?
One moment, please.
Us CPAs, we tend to get into those details.
No, I appreciate that. To be honest, I'm fortunate to be a part of a great network of Feeding America, and I have my colleague here who can give me the details on that, but I can't answer that at the moment.
All right. Well, I'll check into it. I just was curious about how it was structured. So, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Chairman yields back. Mr. Maghr for Texas, 5 minutes. Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks for holding this hearing, and I want to thank our panelists. And it's nice to have some folks from organizations other than the federal government talking about how we address hunger in this country, and also make sure we have an efficient delivery system. Mr. Kuntz and Ms. Ender, the state of Texas began a community partnership program. What have been some of the challenges of initiating that program?
Thank you. Some of the challenges, I think, with initiating the program are, the startup, we had a lot of advertising to do in some sense, letting nonprofits know what's out there, letting the nonprofits know how to participate and what participation means. And in many cases, nonprofits have very limited resources, and I think that presented an initial challenge. That's one that we've been working with nonprofits and with the government to find ways to kind of overcome some of those things. We also, I think one of the initial challenges that we faced is just technology. Many nonprofits are behind technologically. One of the benefits of a community partner program, though, is we're able to leverage the collective technology, expertise, and resources of several nonprofits and congregations in many places against the lack of technology and experience in technology in many of the individual homes of applicants. Ms. Ender, would you like to speak to some of the specifics?
I think for our agency, it was the technology in that the application, just being trained in the application and how to use the online application, to feel comfortable with that, to be able to work with clients. And frankly, I think our social workers, if they were here today, they would say that this has really been a wonderful experience for them, because they want to help people, you know. And before we became a community partner, and they had the training, and now they have the support help to call on when they need. You know, they were having to refer people, and they took a holistic approach, and they're looking at all the need, but they're having to send them elsewhere, you know, to do the application. So it's been wonderful in that respect, but you know, there was a ramping up that had to happen.
One of the issues that, you know, Mr. Kush, you talked about Texas as a big state. I have a big district. Mike has a big district. And so when you leverage and use these partnerships, one of the concerns that, you know, I would have is what kind of oversight is the agency able to do to make sure that these agencies are following the guidelines? And because one of the things that, you know, it's not for a lack of people signing up for the SNAP program. I mean, 1 in 7 Americans today are on the food stamp program. And unfortunately, we think there's some people that are on the food stamp program that maybe have, you know, not necessarily qualified to do that, but because of loopholes and so forth. So what are you doing to make sure that you know, our partners are, you know, following the guidelines to make sure that people that are actually getting on food stamps are actually, you know, qualified to do that?
Great, thank you. Thank you for the reframing the question. I tend to not see challenges, I tend to see possible solutions, and this is one of the great things about the Community Partner Program, is that the Health and Human Services Commission actually has a fairly reasonably rigorous process to become a community partner. HHSC treats community partners essentially as subcontractors, and there's an MOU that is signed despite the fact there's no financial relationship. And then these partners are, we track what's happening with the partners, applications they're filling out, are there common errors and are there patterns, and if there are, HHSC follows up. The Health and Human Services Commission, along with Texas Hunger Initiative, has been doing site visits to each of these different partners, and so we've at least offered and are in the process of making more site visits to all of them. And so as we go through that process, we find we want to make sure that they're displaying proper information, equal opportunity information, and that all of the legal sides are covered, and that we are sharing information with everyone involved. We provide statistical reports to the partners, and we also are able to analyze those on our end to make sure that there aren't errors. Regarding enforcement, the partner never has the opportunity or any intention of determining eligibility or payment rates. That remains entirely with the Health and Human Services Commission, and it allows the government to do, I think, what the government does really well, and the partner to do what it does well.
See, my time has expired, Chair. Do you have anything else back? Mr. Scott from Georgia, 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I'd like to kind of set the stage here properly. First of all, the food banks, charitable food giving, are wonderful and needed organizations. But there is absolutely no way they can take the place of the food stamp program. I think we all need to clear the air and get a good understanding of that fact. The other fact is we cannot and we will not separate the food stamp program from the Farm Bill. We cannot do that any more than we can separate wet from water. The food program is essential to the Farm Bill. Now, why do I say this? Because this hunger the need for the food stamp program is because of some very serious structural inequities and dynamics in our country. Our world, we are 5% of the world's population, yet we incarcerate 26% of the entire prison population in the world. There are some very serious implications of that. We have parents, millions, we have 2.2 million people in our prisons. They are parents, and half of those are forbidden to even get food stamps to take care of their children. 70% of the children have a parent incarcerated. That's number one structural dynamic. The other, we have 1.2 million veterans with very special needs that often charitable, food banks, the structure cannot deal with. The reason I bring this up is so that we can be clear to know this fact. The food stamps, the food banks, food pantries, all of the organizations that you represent are wonderful supplements to this program, the Food SNAP program. So I know the dynamics of what we've got to deal with here. And I want to make those 2 points very, very clear as to what we have to do. August Wilson wrote a wonderful play on Broadway, and it was called Two Trains Running. We got to have 2 trains running here. The SNAP food stamp program and each of your programs. They have to complement one another. And if we view this way, we can make great progress. But if we only want one train running, we'll have a train collision here. So I wanted to ask a question, but it looks like my time is disappearing. But maybe I may have another shot coming around. But I did want to make that. This is serious. Feeding the hungry people in this country. But we got to understand the dynamics of what is really at the core of this problem. It can't be one or the other. It's got to be 2 trains running. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Chairman Simons, you're back. Ms. Walorski, the Chairman of the Subcommittee on Nutrition, recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Kelly, I am absolutely thrilled that you're here. This makes my entire week. We just came back on Monday from a 2-week break, and I'm working just 2 hours from you, South Bend, Indiana, and we have the Northern Indiana Food Bank.
Yeah.
And I've been involved with many different programs there. They do a fantastic job. And I'm thrilled that you're here. I'm thrilled that the rest of you are here too, but I'm all excited about Ms. Green-Patton. So I just wanted to ask you, when you talked about, I'm a believer. Everybody needs help sometime. Mm-hmm. And you were such a strong testimony to that. So when you went back at that 10-year mark, what made the community kitchen, the Chicago's community kitchen, different? Why were they able to help you in that 10-year mark as opposed to the other places that you look for help? What is it that made that whole thing work?
I believe what made it work is, again, the mentorship, the resources, and they never left me alone. You know, a lot of places, they say, here you go. They're the tools, but they don't follow through. And so I've kept a great relationship with them. They check in with me, see how I'm doing, see how my family's doing. They've provided resources such as job initiatives. Whenever employers like myself contact the depository for applicants, they call and they reach out and they help you with your resume. It was just so much more. It was almost like, it's like being a family.
And how many people go, how large is this community kitchen? How many people go through there?
Kate could answer that.
So since the program began in 1998, we've actually successfully graduated 1,200 people from the program, and we are very proud of the fact that in the last year alone, 90% of the graduates have jobs.
That's awesome. That's so great. Well, we'll be in touch from the neighbor state of Indiana up there, but thank you so much for what you're talking about today. And Mr. Webb, I wanted to also thank you for being here. And we've worked with you really on both sides. When I was involved in feeding people in Eastern Europe and international food, we obviously knew very much about Feed the Children, and you're in my district as well in,
Yes, thank you.
in Elkhart, Indiana. So I appreciate you being here as well. But you guys had visited my office not too long ago, some of your colleagues, talking about actually talking to the USDA and being contacted by the USDA to say, hey, you're the professional food feeders, can you come in here and even just kind of talk about, you know, standards, efficiency, ways to streamline, and you mentioned how sometimes it's easier to do this in other countries than here. Can you just kind of talk about that and just kind of elaborate on what are some of the obstacles here? And you mentioned the one fund that, you know, potentially could be used for that, but how do you see this issue of being able to come in, even as just a third-party advisor to a gigantic organization like the USDA and say, hey, here's what best practices we use here and that kind of thing?
Thank you for the question, Congressman. So one of the approaches that we have is that, again, from the international perspective, we see that there are multiple layers to the issue. So we have developed this relationship with USDA where we bring to them programming from the international community that has yielded results there that we think could be best practices here. One example of that is a care group model that we have internationally, and what that does is that it looks to promote health in communities by first taking the approach that there are existing assets in those communities already, and rather than us coming from Oklahoma City to Malawi or to Tanzania or to any community in the United States, that we need to understand the dynamics of what's taking place in the community. So we conduct formative research, we understand what the health indicators are in those communities, we identify what the barriers might be to better health, to accessing programs, and we try to understand who's overcoming those barriers and how. Then we build out a curriculum with the community, and we enlist a team of volunteers to educate the community on what we're doing. So there's been a local buy-in, and we've seen some improvement in those areas, and programs like that are very attractive to the USDA because of the community presence and because of the fact that we're leveraging those existing assets. Sorry.
Let me ask you just one, we're going to be out of time here, but if this committee could do one thing, just one, if there was one thing we could do that would allow you to better connect with our program as it is right now, what would you suggest, or what would one issue be that we could help?
We really believe that innovation funding that would allow organizations to work more collaboratively together would be the solution. To address your question and Congressman Scott's question, in New Orleans and other food deserts, we're looking to build social enterprises that provide food access like a grocery store, and parts of their social service elements around those grocery stores that address education, the care group model I just described, provide health. But the issue is that trying to get things off the ground takes resources. I mean, private funding doesn't always get us to the point we can make that successful.
Gotcha. I appreciate it. Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Congratulations on the start. Recognize Mr. Maghr, Massachusetts, the ranking member on the nutrition subject.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you all for being here, and thank you for your incredible work. And Ms. Green-Patton, I too was thrilled to have you here because you're a success story. But it also illustrates how a lot of our food banks and a lot of our charities have become very innovative. It's not just about giving food, it's about worker training, it's about getting people back in the community on their feet. We have a great example right here in Washington, D.C. D.C. Central Kitchen has a culinary training program as well that has placed people in great jobs and given people hope for the future. So I think that's I think it's great to have you here. Everybody on the panel, I appreciate the work that you're doing. And I think that you've made it clear, and I want to build on what Mr. Scott was talking about, and that is that basically, I think the message that's loud and clear is that churches and charities cannot do it on their own. And to kind of put in perspective, I got a fact sheet here from Bread for the World from, these are 2013 figures, so it's probably a little bit different in 2015, but it says the federal assistance for food and nutrition programs was at about $102 billion. Assistance from churches and charities was at $5.2 billion. There's a huge gap there. So when people say, you know, oh, we can afford to cut SNAP, and the charities and the churches and the synagogues will all pick it up, I mean, that's just not accurate. And I want to be clear, nobody here is arguing that we should cut SNAP, am I correct? And Mr. Webb, just to be clear, when you're talking about your innovation funding, you're not talking about taking that money from SNAP.
We are not.
And putting it into innovation funding programs, robbing Peter to pay Paul.
We're not.
You know, everybody likes to get up and talk about how wonderful all you guys are, but then, you know, I think what we have seen over the last few years is Congress has shirked its responsibility. In the last few years, we've cut the program by something like $19 billion. We didn't renew the ARA monies, the Recovery Act monies, and then there was another cut in the Farm Bill. But every single person on the benefit received a cut. Can you explain to us, anybody here, what are those cuts that came in the last 3 years? How have they impacted your clients and the work that you do?
I can answer. You know, we saw more people showing up at food pantries. The lines got longer, and I think the challenge is that the lines already were long. And to your point, you know, I think what we do, the amazing food banks and food pantries and soup kitchens in this country, I think we're incredible. I am the biggest advocate of the work that we do. So it's hard for me to stand up here. I wish we could do it all, but we can't. And my job is to be honest about what I see in my community and what I see in this country. And what I see are amazing charities that make miracles happen in every neighborhood, in every county, in every state in this country. They do it with volunteers who are working or not working, but who come every day and make magic happen in their communities. But we cannot replace programs like SNAP.
And Ms. Nuckelbauer was concerned about people getting on the benefit who don't deserve to be on the benefit. I'm concerned, because I hear this when I'm back home in Massachusetts, about the people who should be on the benefit that are not on the benefit. So between what the federal government provides and what charities provide, there's still a gap. There are people we're not reaching. Does anyone want to comment on that?
I'd like to comment on that. And going back to your original point, your first question also, Feed the Children does not have the capacity to be like the Chicago Food Depository and the food banks, where we offer food on a daily basis. But we do have truck drops, that we call them, where we go into communities and we provide truckloads of food from time to time. When we have these events, there are lines of people, 300-400 people each time, where we have to cut people off because of the resources that we have, that are available. And at those events, we have opportunities for people to sign up for SNAP, because again, some of the people standing in line for food don't realize that they are able to receive those sources. So part of our process is to have SNAP, the ability for people to sign up for SNAP when they come to these events. So there's people who receive food but don't know they can also get SNAP benefits.
I mean, look, we're the richest country in the history of the world, and we have tens of millions of people who are hungry. As a member of Congress, I'm ashamed of that fact. I think I always say hunger is a political condition. But one thing that I hope you might want to support me on is I'm trying to get the White House to do a White House conference on food, nutrition, and hunger, because to do this kind of these collaborative efforts that you're talking about, it's not just between USDA and the food banks and the charities. We need agencies in the U.S. government to better coordinate. We need the nonprofits and the food banks to communicate better with each other, in the field. So it would seem to me that a White House conference, bringing everybody in a room, locking the door, and saying let's solve this problem, would be a good thing to do. So thank you very much for your work.
So much time as you're back. Mr. Lamoffa for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And thank you to our panelists today. Very uplifting, the work you do firsthand, and the networks that you have in your communities, as well as what I reflect up in mine there in the cities in my district. We have, our Jesus centers, our rescue missions, soup kitchens, and annual events and ongoing events that are really, I think, uplifting for everybody to be able to take part in and remind us of the need to have that private and public partnership to be effective. Mr. Kuntz, in your earlier, forgive me, I was out of the room, multiple hearings, same time for a little while, but as I recall, in your testimony, you mentioned that the public challenges that, with food insecurity that are multi-jurisdictional, a lot of overlap in nature, and require a lot of collaboration between agencies as well as the volunteer organizations and others that are helping out. So with the Texas Hunger Initiative, you've been pretty successful there. And why that's been a good model. So what made you pursue that model in Texas, and what sort of results short term are you seeing with that, and the trending that you're seeing with that effort?
Thank you for the question. The Texas Hunger Initiative, I think from our very inception, has seen that the local congregations and synagogues and mosques and nonprofits were able to see need that government agencies couldn't see. It's not the government agency's role to see that need, but that those local nonprofits didn't have the resources available to fund these types of programs. Maybe in some places they did, but in most places they did not. So Director Everett and his team really sought to combine both of those strengths and really look at the way that we could partner with the government from the very beginning. The Community Partner Program is only the latest incarnation of that. We have seen work with our child nutrition programs and the various other public-private partnerships that we are a part of. Regarding the Community Partner Program, we've seen some preliminary results, and we publish we write an annual evaluation on that. It's actually the property of the Health and Human Services Commission, which, if they're open to sharing that with you, we can show you some of the short-term results. At the end of this year, we will have our third semester, our third year results, and long-term we intend to publish on that to make those results as helpful to everyone else using or creating some version of this model. One of our favorite pieces of what we do are things like the Dallas Coalition for Hunger Solutions, where we have stakeholders and players from government agencies and from all different types of nonprofits, educational institutions, schools coming together to figure out how to address hunger and food insecurity, as well as a wealth of other issues within those communities. And so that's a really good example of a collaborative approach.
Certainly. Okay, so the local input from people on the ground right there in those neighborhoods, in those synagogues, and those churches is really valuable to have the more effective outreach and interaction.
Yes, not just outreach, but also to kind of give a voice. They are reaching out, yes, to the community, but they are also able to take the information and advice and requests from community members, and we take those back to the Health and Human Services Commission. And we talk
and execute on the need.
Yes, every 2 weeks, our field staff are on a call working with the Health and Human Services Commission, sharing information back and forth to create some really neat structures and new opportunities.
Interesting. Well, I find that's a fairly common theme across the boundaries of Natural Resources Committee. Local people that manage forests and try to fight forest fire are complaining they're not getting enough local input with federal firefighters or federal Forest Service outside entities that don't know how to do it locally. So that's an interesting that the local input is very important. If other states were looking for a model on this and looking at Texas, what would you recommend be done more differently to streamline and maybe help other states to emulate what you're trying to do there? Is there some speed bumps that you would advise them to go around?
Sure. I think one of the speed bumps for a lot of organizations is funding. It does require some kind of funding in order to get these partnerships off the ground, in order to really do
startup funding, not program fund, but the startup type funding.
Right. The startup funding for the kind of things that Texas Hunger Initiative does. We convene all these organizations, but that requires everything from staff to perform the function of a backbone organization, which is a specific collective impact term, to fund those backbone organizations, to create these partnerships, and to, honestly, to pay for coffee at these meetings to keep people in the room and keep them working.
Okay. All right. Well, my time's up. I yield back. Thank you.
So much time has expired. Mr. Ashford from Nebraska, 5 minutes.
Story in my life, but anyway, I like Mr. Rouser. And anyway, I ran a housing authority, and Mr. Webb's comments are all the comments are great, and thank you all for coming. Mr. Webb's comments really ring true with me. And as Congressman Scott's comments as well about this fact, and that is, my sense is that we do have an obligation, as Mr. Scott indicates, to provide sustainable food for our people that need it in our country. Where we're blowing it is beyond that. The same thing with housing. When I ran the housing authority, the challenge was, yes, the federal government has a role, of course, in helping to provide affordable housing. It's a federal program, 100% federally funded, and then from time to time, we would have our programs for self-sufficiency eliminated or cut. Your comments about the innovation grants really hits home. I know in Omaha and in the 2nd Congressional District of Nebraska, we're very innovative in doing what you're doing in Texas. I'm not going to claim better than Texas because that gets into a thing. But basically, and we're working on developing urban farms, very aggressively doing that. We have a culinary institute at the Metropolitan Community College in our area that's second to none, and all of this is starting to evolve. But as was the case at the Housing Authority, when we tried to encourage people to get off of the need for public housing, we're always stuck with the federal program either wasn't funded properly, or, to your point, and I think more importantly, is that the states or the localities were not given the ability through these sort of innovation grants concept to help do it. And to the point that was made earlier, you can't do it. You're not going to be able to do everything by yourself through raising money through nonprofits. So my question is, this has really struck a chord with me. Could you just comment a little further on how these innovation grants would work? I think you're right, spot on, and would make a huge difference.
So thank you for the question. We believe the innovation grants would spur collaboration because the conversation needs to be expanded beyond just hunger, because we need to understand that hunger is one of the issues, but there are underlying factors as well. So when we're looking at these solutions, it needs to be a broad-based approach to the solution that understands that poverty is a component, education is a component, employment is a component, and bringing these collaborative folks to the table to take their piece of the issue in a way that gives them the flexibility to test new ideas is the approach that we're suggesting. And one of the things that we've seen in other agencies that have social innovation funding is it allows folks to contribute their own resources, whether that's financial, whether that's human capital, to come up with a solution. And as long as the barriers for entrance to participating in those innovation funds aren't cost prohibitive, because a smaller organization that might have a fantastic idea might not have $1 million to put to a one-to-one match, then we would see a lot more organizations that have the ability to get in there.
So more efficient use of those dollars.
Exactly.
And it seems to me it would be, we tried to, at the Housing Authority, we did urban farming, we did some of that, and this was a little bit ago, so it's come a long ways in the last 10 years. But I absolutely agree with you. I mean, if the federal government through direct support can provide some of the basic needs, housing and food. You wanted to say something?
If I may,
Yeah.
I actually, there are some successes that I think we should celebrate. I believe the food banks and the
Well, sure.
agencies are the USDA's largest partner.
Sure.
And I will tell you that there's actually a fair amount of innovation and partnership that happens every day. In my own community, we regularly meet with representatives from USDA, with other organizations. We regularly talk about what works, and we see that replicated. And while I am certainly, if there are opportunities to invest more deeply in hunger relief, I'm certainly supportive of that. But I will tell you that if we can keep the federal nutrition programs strong, then the dollars that we get from private donations can actually help us support those innovative efforts. But right now, so many of us are having to buy additional food to ensure that people have food to eat, as food programs such as SNAP goes through cuts. And so I would just say innovation is happening. There's always more that can happen, but there's a lot of awesome stuff that's happening in communities.
Yeah, I think there is, in my time's up, awesome stuff is happening, but I also agree with Mr. Webb that we haven't, there's much more that should be done as well. And my time is
Jim's time has expired. Mr. Yoho for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate it. I appreciate the panel being here. And Ms. Mayor, I appreciate your passion when you're describing how the communities come out and the different organizations come out. That's what I see in our area. I represent Florida's 3rd Congressional District, large rural agricultural area with hubs of innovation around there. And you know, if I were to ask, and Mr. Chairman, I don't know if this is acceptable, if I were to ask in here how many people have ever been on food assistance or food stamps in this room, show your hands if you're not embarrassed to. I have too. And a lot of people say, well, you know, how could you have been on there? You're U.S. Congressman. I was young once. I just turned 60. And I understand the importance of that. And I don't know anybody in the country, I don't care if they're the most conservative or the most liberal, that is not willing to help somebody in need. And so these programs, when we see the communities coming together, solving a problem locally, I think that's the best solution we can have. And we need to bolster that with the charitable contributions and things like that and allow people to do that. And the more, if government interferes and takes that away, it would be a lot worse. And in our area, we visited several food banks, from the large one that feeds thousands and thousands of people to one that is out in the rural country. And I found it interesting because the one that was run at a church, to be able to get food, you could come twice a month, but you had to show an ID. You had to prove that you lived where you live with an electric bill or a water bill or something like that. Actually, it wasn't a water bill. But you had to prove residence before you could even get in there and leave with the food. And so I see a dichotomy of in a urban area versus a rural area. In your experience, what do you see the management in a larger area, you know, like in an urban area, how they distribute food and how they acquire their food versus in the smaller rural areas? Is there pretty much the same, or what's your experience on that?
So, as I said, we have more than 200 food banks that make up the Feeding America network, and I always joke that if you've seen one food bank, you've seen one food bank, and we all operate a little bit differently, but we do have some things that unite us. And one of the things is an adherence to quality, to food safety standards. We have rigorous guidelines that ensure that all of the food banks in our network are operating at the highest operational practice level possible, not just for charitable organizations, but for the food industry. So that includes regularly having outside inspections from third-party auditors, and so making sure that we are adhering to the best practices for the food industry as a whole. Food banks are fortunate that we have such a strong partnership with the food industry, and that makes that possible. So, number one, it's making sure that the food is safe. It's also making sure that we treat clients with dignity and with respect. That happens 1,000 different ways, but it's always making sure that our partners have the tools that they need, that we are challenging ourselves to be the best organizations that we can possibly be, so that when a family or an individual shows up at that food pantry, they are treated with respect, they get the food that they need, and that food is the highest quality food possible so that they can, as Kelly said, get on that trampoline that takes them back into being successful.
And I agree 100% with you, and I appreciate that and your compassion. I think that's something that shows very clearly. I'm running out of time here. What I'd like to concentrate on is to hear from you how we can make these programs better, because in our area, it got into a situation where one of the larger contractors to the USDA that was getting the food to give out, there was a squabble because they contract with smaller companies, and we have one in our district that I said feeds thousands and thousands of people. They lost that contract because a new person came over and took over the USDA contract, and this new company that came out was promoting how much food they were giving out, but what they were doing is they were going into homeless shelters giving out frozen chickens, multiple frozen chickens to people that don't have refrigeration, and that's a waste of the taxpayers' money. And so I want to hear from you guys, whether you submit it to this agency or I'll submit questions to you, and I'd love to hear back from you how we make the process more efficient, more streamlined, so that the American people get the bang for their buck, giving money to programs like this, and we bolster the charitable, but that with what you do, we get the best results we can. And the other thing, we want to focus on getting people in, get them up, and get them out and self-sufficient. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
The gentleman goes back. Now please recognize the gentlelady from New Mexico for 5 minutes of questioning.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I want to thank the panel for being here today. And I also want to particularly thank Ms. Ender. I started my career serving seniors, so I appreciate the work that you do, and that of the whole panel certainly very much. And in fact, I did consumer protection work, and that landed me a terrific job running the State Unit on Aging, which is I was the first Secretary of Aging and Long-Term Care. And in the 90s, I don't need the USDA information to tell me that SNAP's reach to senior households and even households for adults with disabilities is lower than it should be, and that you're reaching less than a third. They say a third. In states like New Mexico, I would bet, I need to look at that data again, I would bet it's even lower than that. And yet with SNAP, we're reaching more than 80% of other households that would be eligible. And for a state that's the hungriest state in terms of children in the nation, that's critically important, but making sure that we reach everyone. I also really appreciate that we've made the case that nutrition is a key factor in so many issues that are not only about respect and dignity and independence and health, but they save this country incredible resources. And we talk about diabetes and mitigation and elimination and management, and we talk about other chronic diseases and osteoporosis, but we really don't even talk about dementia, which can be reversed with appropriate nutrition for some types that are related to a vitamin B deficiency and related nutritional deficiencies. And given that we really worry about long-term care costs, and we should, this is a way that really can assist us to manage huge health care costs in the future, in addition to making sure that we're feeding this population. And my last point about the relevancy and the value and the importance of SNAP benefits for this population is that in the context of cuts and limited resources in the private sector and the public sector, we also should know that home-delivered meals, both privately and through the Older Americans Act, have been reduced. And so your weekend meals and your evening meals and home-delivered meals are really gone. I can tell you in my state, I'm happy if I can get the agency to commit that they'll do 5 meals, 1 a day, for individuals who aren't coming to a congregate center, and even for those, there are waiting lists. And we don't care about breakfast, apparently, or dinner, and we aren't caring about weekends. And the last point, back to health, is you can't take half your medications if you're not getting the right food and nutrition. So the whole thing, we have to think about it in that context. So what can we do specifically in SNAP to make sure 2 things? That this population is clearly aware, and that all of our partners are helping folks with this eligibility process, and then 2, that we really talk more candidly about the fact that seniors
receive less than half the typical benefit. And I can remember in the 90s, a poor senior citizen with one meal a day through the Older Americans Act services, and that's not every senior in your community or state, got a $10 benefit. And I had to really make them go through the hoops to do that $10 benefit. But $10 was maybe a breakfast for the week. And so I was all about making sure that they did it. So I want to really think hard about making sure that we create an environment for our partners, including the states and USDA, to think better and harder about ways to reach this population.
Yeah, I think that's, you've really hit on the big issue that we have. There are a lot of seniors that are isolated. They're in their homes. They're not plugged into networks. They're not going to the senior centers and getting the congregate meals.
May not even be a senior center in their community.
Right, there might not be. But even if there are lots of services in the community, they're not accessing it because for a myriad of reasons, they're isolated and in their home. And that's a huge challenge. If they're out and about and they're plugged into networks and all, and, then they may know about some of these.
Is there a public health model here that maybe would work so that, for example, as we're doing door-to-door and vaccinations and WIC and those kinds of programs, that we incentivize those programs to reach out and make sure they're connecting populations to a SNAP benefit because it's all related?
I think we need to think more and more about, if something works with children, does it work with older adults? Vice versa. If it's
Grandparents raising grandchildren.
If it's working with older adults, could it work with children? Because there are some similarities there with delivering services and all. I think we need to think that way a little more.
Gentlelady's time expired. We'll have opportunity for a second round, or Mr. Webb, you can submit your answer in writing. But to be respectful for the other members, we'll just 5 minutes. Mr. 7, Mr. Newhouse, 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you all for being here and joining the conversation. Very important. I had the pleasure and the experience of when I was Director of Agriculture in our state of Washington, that we had the responsibility for the emergency food programs. So I know firsthand the value of everything that all of you have talked about and what you do. Very proud of the accomplishments, certainly aware of the challenges that we have and a lot of work to do. Being a farmer also, I worked very hard to try to build that relationship between the people that produce the food and those that need the food. And so I think we have a lot of great things going. I know we do in the state of Washington, and I hear similar things going on around the country. So I just got one simple question, and I'd like each of you, if you have a response, to answer. It has to do with government. In working with government, how does it benefit what you're trying to accomplish in your mission? And what do you see are things that government's impeding and holding you back from accomplishing what you'd like to accomplish?
So if I can take that one. One of the issues, so Feed the Children has been 99% privately funded since our inception. That comes from a mindset where we were looking more singularly focused about our ability to solve the issues alone. We've come to a place where we realize that's not the case. So we see the value of supplemental resources like government funding to help us to move the needle and encourage and incentivize the collaboration we've described. The other thing the government funding would allow us to do, we talked about innovation, but the next step beyond innovation is finding those sustainable domestic programming that one of the models we're talking about setting up as a social enterprise, so that with the government funding would be sort of an upfront capital that would create this model that has a sustainable approach where after we have built this system where that's a credible business that can stand on its own, the need for government assistance, the need for private resources don't need to be used in those type of situations. So having government funding to support that collaboration, to allow us to some startup funding to do and create the innovative models and create these long-term sustainable solutions is where government funding could be most impactful.
I would actually say that, as I said in my remarks, I think it's a partnership. And it's not so much that I want the investment in my organization. Our organization is largely privately funded. Where I really need government to invest is in programs like SNAP and WIC and TFAP and CACFP and summer meals to make sure that those programs are strong for the people who need them when they turn to them. We love having that partnership, and together we can make sure that people in our community have the food that they need to eat.
Thank you.
I am so thankful that I'm physically in between the two of these presenters this morning, because I also want to point out that we would absolutely affirm the value and efficacy of SNAP. We also believe the data shows that expanding these public-private partnerships reduces the burden on government, and it increases efficiencies in the program. And so the long-term effects of these public-private partnerships, of keeping these programs strong and enabling us to do these partnerships better, is going to facilitate a trampoline effect, and it both reduces the burden on the government and enables nonprofits to leverage the funds that we have and funds that we're asking for to do this better.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And I would say that to not forget that, I mean, you can have a lot of wonderful organizations out there in the community that are doing wonderful things. You can have a lot of wonderful volunteers out in the community doing wonderful things. But as Dustin said earlier, you do have to have some funds to have someone that helps coordinate, you know, that pulls everything together. When you have coalitions in the community that are working together. And we're all in the trenches, and we're working hard, and it's hard sometimes to step back and to meet. I mean, we said there are a lot of innovative things going on, and there are, but it takes stepping back and building coalitions and taking a little time to put your heads together. And to do that, you need a little help in coordination sometimes. And I would say that sometimes maybe government forgets that coordination part. Okay. You know, they're really good about thinking about the services needed, but maybe forget about there needs to be coordination.
Well, I see my time is just about to expire, but...
Jim's time has expired. Mr. Costa for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and I've been having another committee and meeting concurrently, so I've had to go back and forth, but I've picked up snippets of the testimony of our witnesses here, and I think you basically have explained to members of the committee the importance of this public-private partnership and the relations and the overall efforts and the challenges and the demands. And in many areas of the country, the need exceeds the available resources to provide the support for those people who are living in conditions of poverty and extreme poverty. I don't think I have to tell any of you about the horrific drought that we are facing in California. And I'm represent an area, along with some other colleagues, where it's ground zero. And this drought has resulted in hundreds and thousands of acres. It's estimated 1 million acres of land out of 6 million acres in California that will be fallow this year as a result of the drought. Now, the impacts to the farmers are very, very devastating. The impacts to the farm workers are, in some cases, catastrophic, and to the farm communities, the school districts, and the like. Let me give you a snapshot of the poverty that exists and the impacts of the food bank in my district, the 16th Congressional District in Fresno, Madera, and Merced. The community food bank continues to see high levels of family struggle and recovery of the wake of the recession, but the drought obviously has compounded it. 280,000 individuals per month are being provided food from the Fresno Community Food Bank. 90,000 of those 280,000 monthly are children, of which are being reached. And only 60% of the efforts of the food bank are providing food for families in the 5 county areas. SNAP, therefore, is an important part of keeping folks with necessary food. Over 522,000 families have benefited from the SNAP program in the area. So when you have that kind of level of 40% and 50% unemployment, and these are people who I've known all my life. They're some of the hardest working people you ever meet who cannot work today because there's no water for them to work on the farms. It's really very, very devastating. So, and let's just be frank. A number of these people can't benefit from the SNAP programs because they're not here with legal documents. So, the community food banks play a critical role for those individuals. And the churches and the other organizations are very critical. The volunteer organizations, as some of you represent. I was just at an annual banquet for this food bank that I talked about 2 weeks ago, run by Andy Souza. And they raised a lot of money. It was all private sector money, big fundraiser, 600 people there, a lot of the ag organizations, big sponsors, to supplement the TFAB program that provides funding for the community food banks, because it's not enough. That's how big the problem is. So let me just close by making some observations. States have few options to achieve cuts outside the benefit cuts because of 90% of the program expenditures go for SNAP. If the cuts from SNAP come solely from the benefit cuts, states would have to cut an average of $55 per person, not a household, to each of these affected. For a family of four, this would mean over $200 a month. 70% of the SNAP participants are of families with children. More than a quarter are in households that include senior citizens or people with disabilities. Finally, I think the SNAP program, supplemented with the community food banks and the private sector involvement that you folks represent, are all needed. They're all needed. And the SNAP program works so that when you have greater times of economic uncertainty and recession, it expands and it contracts when things get better. And hopefully it will rain. We're praying for rain in California and snow. I don't know if any of you have any observations you'd like to make on my comments.
I would, and just that we feel that beyond California, the price of fresh produce, it is a burden for families who are struggling. It's also a burden for food banks like mine that now purchase 34% of our food. And so we pay more, the families we serve pay more. It also underscores why it's so important for us to have the dollars for the TFAP program, storage and distribution. It costs a lot of money to make sure that people have food in our community.
The gentleman's time has expired. Mr. Allen for 5 minutes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Mrs. Green-Patton. I want to tell you that you're a hero of mine, and I will think that my time in Congress will be successful when everyone has the opportunity that you have had to succeed.
Thank you.
And that's what we want in America. And thank you for your testimony. I hope that you will continue to give that testimony throughout this land to encourage others to seek the help and counsel and advice and to do the hard work it takes to do what you've accomplished, because I know it was difficult. I have worked in many charitable organizations, had the privilege to employ a lot of folks and help them, and that's one of the greatest privileges of my life. Growing up in Augusta, Georgia, we have had our share of issues as far as a community, but the food bank is something that everybody can support and do everything they can to help those folks do their work. And I've also had the privilege of serving others down at our Thanksgiving dinner, and that's always a privilege to talk with folks who need hope. And again, the thing I love about this testimony that you're all doing today is that I find that in this country that folks who serve are so full of joy. I mean, the true joy is in serving. And again, that's a message that I'd like for every American to hear. I just, I want to make sure that as far as this body, this Congress, is there anything that we're doing that's restricting what you're doing out there, and how could you help us fix it? And I'll just open that up to the panel. So we're not causing any problems for you. You better speak now, or forever hold your peace. Anything you'd like to share?
I'll share an experience. One of the issues that we were having was with the demonstration grants that are available that often have to go through states, and it makes it difficult to apply for nonprofits, depending on the political will in your state. Even though you may have a very credible program that you think would demonstrate results, it really is dependent upon the will of the state to get those, to get that.
So there needs to be a uniformity between the state.
Or to be allowed to go to the nonprofits on the ground, one of those, but the programs are at the risk of the political will of the state.
Okay. About what percent in this country are we providing as far as charitable versus, say, government food? Any statistics as far as, like, a SNAP program provides a certain percentage of food versus charitable contributions?
For the country?
That's something we don't have the numbers for.
Yeah. I think that would be good, useful information as far as, providing for these private public partnerships is, okay, what is expected of us and what is expected of others.
What I can say, Congressman, one quick question, comment,
yes, sir.
Is that Feed the Children last summer offered the summer food service program with the USDA, and we were able to provide 200,000 meals in Oklahoma over the summer.
Okay.
And 9,000 of those meals were covered by federal resources.
Okay.
And the rest of the meals were covered through privately funded sources.
I also would say that I don't know that you can ever get really good figures on that, because certainly large efforts, large community efforts are going to have figures, but you have so many small groups and, small churches or nonprofits that are doing a little something that I don't know that you could ever really get accurate figures,
Right. Well, in other words, on the SNAP program, I think in 14 we fed about 46.5 million people, which is about $418 per person per day. And do y'all keep any statistics like that?
We in Texas have a whole variety of statistics we would love to share with your office. I will say that Craig Gunderson is one of the leading experts in this field, and he estimates about 3% come from charitable, of the total food come from charitable resources.
All right, great. Well, again, thank you so much for what you do, and it's been a privilege to be here with you today. I yield back the remainder of my time.
Time has expired. Mr. Aguilar, 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank the panelists for the discussion. I think the overall theme that I'm hearing is about partnerships and collaboration, and how it really does take everybody at the table, including us, to play a role into that. Ms. Mayor, in your testimony, you mentioned the gap between SNAP enrollment and SNAP eligibility. In your experience, can you dig a little bit deeper on what are some of the factors that lead to that low enrollment, especially in African American and Latino areas and communities? And as a follow-up, are there cultural barriers where you think we can work collaboratively together with some of our community groups in order to make it happen?
Thank you. I'm so glad you asked that question, particularly building on the last question. The challenge that we see so much is at the state level. In the state of Illinois, we have an 18-page long SNAP application. And I always joke with people, I know that sometimes it's popular for folks to talk about walking in the shoes of a SNAP recipient by trying to shop on the average benefit a day. I actually encourage all of you to fill out your state's SNAP application. In my case, in the state of Illinois, it's incredibly complex. And it is a daunting challenge, particularly the type is very small. So if you have any sort of eyesight challenge, if English is not your first language, if you aren't well-versed in a whole slate of bureaucratic terms. It's very complicated to understand. Also, as Ms. Green-Patton testified, if you have a job, it is very difficult to apply for SNAP benefits because you have to take a day off of your job. We have made it very complicated for people to get this benefit. Additionally, for people who are not native English speakers in the Latino community, I think there's an additional set of challenges. There's a lot of concern. It's why we see SNAP outreach with private partners to be an incredibly effective tool. There are people who very understandably don't have good feelings about interfacing with the Illinois Department of Human Services. It's often a bureaucratic nightmare.
Thank you, I appreciate that. Are we doing enough, and I guess this could go for the entire panel, are we doing enough SNAP outreach in those underserved communities? We can start with you and kind of work our way back.
I think there's certainly more that we need to do. We do it through a network of volunteers as well as paid staff. We are stretched incredibly thin, and we know that there are still people who are eligible in our community that we are not reaching. And so there is a lot more that we can do to connect people to SNAP.
Just at my church alone, where we offer free hot meals to people a couple times a month, I have people asking for food before they leave. And so it makes me wonder, how far are we able to reach? And so I don't know if it's a monetary thing, I don't know. I'm just not sure. I know that we have volunteers and they can only do so much, but it seems like we can do a little bit more to make sure everyone is touched.
Just want to first clarify, my organization, the partners we work with, we don't necessarily do SNAP outreach. We're not trying to increase SNAP rolls. We are really focused on access. That's part of the genius of the Community Partner Program, is that in these areas, in these neighborhoods, when an organization sees the need, culturally and neighborhood appropriate organizations do the application and do the assistance and are able to overcome a lot of those barriers and to provide, like I said, access, which is our most crucial issue.
Thank you.
Well, we would like to see more seniors on SNAP because, they're underserved by the program. And so, and we are a part of the Hunger Coalition, and so we are actively out in the community trying to educate people that there is a program that can help them if they have that need. I'll say that since we've been a community partner, when we first started out, we would assist 3 people a week, and now we're to 3 people a day. And so we're excited about that and encouraged because we have a lot of hungry seniors out there in the community. And yes, we would very much like to enroll more of them.
Thank you.
And like Dustin said, my organization doesn't specifically do SNAP outreach, but when we have events where we provide food and essentials to individuals, we have opportunities for people to sign up for SNAP there, and we consistently see people still signing up. And one of the approaches that we are hoping to use, that we've learned internationally and want to bring domestically, is a care group model I described earlier, where we have volunteers who are going door to door in individuals' homes and educating them on curriculum. The SNAP outreach and enrollment process could be something that those volunteers are trained to do in home. But it can't solely rest on the volunteers, but it could be one option.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Gentleman's time expired. Dr. Benishek, 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks for being here today. I think you reinforced my own personal thought about the private sector and the public-private partnerships. It just seems to me that visiting those kind of folks in my district, which I just got back from, they do things so much more efficiently than, the state bureaucracy, which Ms. Maghr sort of explained to us how it is in Illinois. And I got to meet this past week, several people in jobs programs and young people getting skills programs. And so I really appreciate the fact that you guys are promoting this, because I think that's really where the answer is to, have some government funding for you guys, because you don't have that much overhead. You know who the people are that need the help, and I think you get it to them. So
I just want to say thank you for that. Ms. Green-Patton, I had a couple of questions for you because you mentioned a couple of things about how this community kitchen helped you find a job. And I have a concern about people who are on the SNAP program and then they're concerned about getting a job because then they might not be eligible and for the SNAP, and they end up being worse off working than they were. Can you talk about that a little bit? I mean, I know that this community kitchen helped you out. Is that a real issue that people have some barriers to getting a job because they don't have a way of working and getting the SNAP? Or tell me more about that.
Well, I can only speak from my experience, but just like with any job, you start a job and some jobs, they don't allow you to take off for the first year or for the first 90 days. And so when you are finally blessed to receive a job and you have to go and fill out, like Kate said, that 18-page application, and then you have to go down to the office and stay there all day long until you're seen or until your appointment is, and then you have to come back because there's some more needed forms that you didn't know about before. It's almost discouraging for people to apply for the benefits, I feel.
Yeah. Mr. Coons, it seems like it's working better in Texas than it is in Illinois. Would you say that from what you're saying? I mean, from what I understood, it was easier in Texas. Is that right?
I certainly think so. I think one thing is we have a very short wait time for navigators to help with the application, and a community partner can be open at any time, can be open in the evenings and on weekends, can be at community events, as well as be a place that's open during the day for those that work evenings.
That process is not available in Illinois, is that right, Ms. Maghr?
That's right, and I think that's one of the challenges just in general is that there are 50 states and SNAP is administered 50 different ways, and there are some states that do an amazing job, and there are some states, frankly, that don't.
I think the application, though, I mean, there are some positive things happening in Texas, but we have issues with the application, too. I mean, it's, and improvements have been made, by the way, so it's a lot better than it was, but we do have problems with the application. It's very confusing. And yet, there's a certain amount of, there's a certain amount of information that has to be there, that's the reality.
And if I could talk to the workforce development component you were mentioning earlier, one of the things that we're doing with Feed the Children is we've built a center to identify bright spots that are happening in communities, programs that are demonstrating measurable impact and just need some support to be scaled up. And one of the communities we worked in New Orleans, we've seen a program similar to the model that you're describing called Liberty's Kitchen, where they work with at-risk or opportunity youth to provide them with job training and work development resources, and then they have a network of partners to try to place them in jobs because of the relationships they're building. So they're moving them through the pipeline and improving their situation beyond just the assistance.
You're right. I just met in Michigan with this Experience Works. They work with the Michigan employment agency, and they get older folks into some nonprofit jobs, and then they transition to another job from there, and that was a program that was working well. I met several members of the program that were, got work and then transferred out. So I think that's a key component of what we're doing here. I'm trying to figure out how to make this SNAP and transition back into the workplace an easier thing. Does anyone, I think I'm out of time, but thank you for answering my questions. Appreciate it, Mr. Chairman.
Jim's time is right. Ms. Bustos for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am from Illinois, so I want to say welcome to a couple of our panelists here from Illinois. I hope your trip to D.C. is going well. And Ms. Maghr, your invitation for those of us sitting around the table here to fill out an application, I think, is an intriguing one. The fact that I have, 53-year-old eyes and small print is a bother to me now was an interesting thing to point out. And the fact that it's 18 pages long, unbelievable. And so I'd like to just get a feeling for that anyway. But, you mentioned there are 50 different ways to apply for benefits. I'm wondering, is Illinois looking at some of these best practices, and is there anything that we can do on a federal level to, I don't know if it's through a pilot program or anything else, to figure out what's working well, if it's Texas that's the role model, or if it's some other state. But you know, I'd like to make sure that we're doing it right, at least in the state of Illinois, and wondering how we can play a part in that.
Me too. And so just, I think that one of the challenges that frankly all states face, but in particular we face in the state of Illinois, is that there is a hesitation and a reluctance to invest in some of the systems that make it possible for for government to be efficient. And so we have an antiquated system. We have a paper-based system in Illinois. And so everything is based on people filling out paper applications, and it takes time. Applications get lost, and yet when you talk to most people about do they want to invest in buying computers and database systems for state government, you don't get a lot of enthusiasm for that idea, particularly in a state that's had some of the challenges that we've had in Illinois. And yet at the same time, I look at what modern commerce can do, and we can move food and we can move products around the world in a matter of hours, and it is endlessly frustrating to me that we cannot figure out a way to deliver the same quality of service efficiently in the public sector. We strive to do that. We certainly in the state of Illinois look at other states that are models, but we know we have a long way to go.
Who's doing it right, and what can we learn from who's doing it right? And anybody can answer that, but there's got to be a role model, state or community or someplace where we can say this is what we should be doing and somehow systemize it so everybody can get this right, eliminate waste or redundancy or whatever else is clogging up this the efficiency of the system, and making sure that hungry people don't go hungry.
Ms. Bustos, I don't want to say that Texas is doing it right. That's a bold statement. I want to say we're doing it well, and we're getting better at it. I think that we are creating a model for public-private partnership that is incredibly effective and creates a great exchange between the private sector and the public sector, and creates a lot of information. I think that we're creating a great model, and I also know that we have an annual summit coming up, and you are invited to come in and learn about how this works every day on the ground and with our legislators.
And to go back to an earlier comment that we made around the innovation funding that would allow organizations to better share best practices, I mean, the fact that we have the conversation around not being able to identify what those are would be strengthened by the ability to come together in a forum like it's being described, to be able to share that among the community of practice.
And I'll just say, in Illinois, I don't want us to be battered too much. We do have a new governor who has been very supportive of all of the food banks in the state of Illinois, and we are looking at Texas, and we are talking to the governor and his team about what can we learn and what can we do in the state of Illinois to streamline and make our system entirely more efficient.
All right, thanks to all the panelists, and I yield back the remainder of my time.
Your lady yields back. Thank you, Mr. Emmer, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thanks again to the panel. It's been, sorry I had to come in just a little bit late, but I haven't missed anything since, and I want to thank you not only for being here, but for your candor. I think sometimes we tend to think, at least in my experience starting at a state level, that just because we've been doing something a certain way means that we have to keep doing it that way. We might add to it, but we keep doing it. And I think you and your experience, your testimony here today proves otherwise. I understand that everybody's taking a very clear approach that you want to be in addition to SNAP benefits. But I will tell you, my coming here today wasn't about that. I want to know more about what I think are successful programs that are community-based from the ground up instead of from the top down. Personally, working with faith communities, working with interested individuals in my home state, frankly, doing it myself, I find that the connection with the individual in need, which I think is some of the personal experience we've heard today, is better for both of the individuals involved. And I think somebody said years ago, it's probably already been stated here today, that a hand up is much better than a hand out. That being said, I also get a little nervous when I hear the testimony today because, to be critical, there were questions that were asked earlier. Please tell us what the government structure is doing to restrict your ability. And everybody sat at the table and was frozen. And I do appreciate you trying to be very statesmanlike in the answers. But going forward, I think people get a little territorial and people worry about you have to work with these folks every day and you need the partnership, so you don't want to create any unnecessary tension. But we need to know what those potential obstacles and difficulties are, because frankly, the future of the system is going to be more based on you and your experiences on the ground and the innovation that you're looking to create. That's what people up on this side of the dais need to hear about and understand in order to make those votes that are so important. So even though I hate the statements, I just made one, and I want you to understand that I'm just learning. As one of the new people here, the bad news about us new people is that we have a lot to learn. The good news is that we don't know everything yet, so we can still learn. Mr. Webb, if I could, you talked about your recommendations, and you gave a list of 3. It struck me that, and we just had a question about, can you tell us how much is provided from one source versus from another source? I want to talk about measurements and impacts. Can you tell me how you're measuring the impact? And if others want to add to this, and because I want to know how I can quantify it when I have to make policy decisions.
So domestically?
Yes.
At this point, domestically, our measurement is around number of meals served, amount of poundage of food, millions of pounds of food distributed, those type of pieces. And we are building research now to identify some of the health implications and moving people into different situations. But right now, it's based on meals served and millions of pounds that distributed. And in our opinion, there's a difference in what takes place internationally, because we actually measure how we're moving people from one situation to the next. And if I could use an analogy, it would be almost like someone trying to get healthier and measuring the amount of weight they can lift. Yeah, it may be one component of it, but you need to have maybe measure BMI, cholesterol, those sort of things to make an informed decision about how you're moving your health.
Well, and I guess that's where I was coming from, is one side is production, how much you're producing, how much you're providing, but the other one is results, which is Ms. Green-Patton, when you talk about results.
I think you've raised an incredibly important point in that more of us, we need to more and more think about the health of the people that we're serving. And this idea, from our perspective, food is medicine. And it's not just about moving pounds. It's not just about the throughput, but it's also thinking about the health impact. And so food banks all across this country are engaged in partnerships with health systems, with hospitals, and we are measuring the health.
I'm running out of time, so I just want to say, if you could get us that information,
absolutely,
very helpful for somebody like me. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Gentleman's time has started. Mr. Scott, one more round. David?
Yeah, thank you. I just want to ask you, I was listening to Bill O'Reilly last night on Fox News, and he had a veteran on. One of the areas that I work very hard on is with our veterans. As I mentioned earlier, we have 1 million that we know about, veterans that we can find that are on food stamps. In that conversation last night, Bill O'Reilly was talking about the suicide rate of our veterans. Asked him about that. And the point he said was the fact that out of desperation, this guy had tried suicide. And it's very profound to me when Bill asked him the question, why did you want to take your own life? And he said, because after going and fighting for my country, I come back home, I can't keep a job, I can't have a job, I can't even put food on the table for my family. That's why, Mr. Chairman, I really appreciate you putting this hearing on. This is one of the most important hearings that we could have, we can survive without a lot of things. A car, I mean, you name it. The one thing we cannot survive without is food. And so when our soldiers are going without food, that bothers me as it does, I'm sure, everybody sitting in this room. We're not doing enough. I want to ask you, each of you, in your food banks, do you have a special effort? Do you concentrate? Is there anything that you all are doing to get at this most needed target? We on the federal side are doing things, but not enough. When you hear the kind of conversation that was on Bill O'Reilly last night, could you tell me, Ms. Maghr, what you all are doing to reach our veterans?
Absolutely. So 18% of the households that get food from the Greater Chicago Food Depository have either an active or a former member of the military services.
Did you say 18%?
And for us, it was so troubling that it really spurred us into action on two fronts. First was targeting our SNAP outreach specifically to veterans and working in partnership with organizations that specifically address the needs of veterans, both those who are homeless as well as those who are not homeless. It also spurred us to open 2 food pantries operating inside of the 2 VA hospitals in our community. And tomorrow morning, if you were to happen to go to the VA center just outside the city of Chicago, you would see close to 300 men and women who are veterans of the armed services lining up to get food.
That is a very, very salient point. I don't think this country realizes how impactful the situation is with our veterans going hungry. And it is a shame and it is a disgrace. Are there any others of you that have similar efforts targeting our veterans?
Just to comment on that, Mr. Scott, as a veteran with a bum knee and who struggled with reintegrating into civilian society post-deployment, this is an issue that's particularly close to my heart as well, obviously. We have worked to find and coordinate partnerships with veteran services organizations, with VFW organizations, and some VFWs are community partners taking part in this partnership with the state of Texas.
Okay, and we have found, we're not the experts in this area, but we've found that vets are more than twice as likely than the average American to be food insecure.
That's right.
So we're actually trying to build some programs now that are not the final solution, but similar to our food drop truck models, providing food to those veterans in their time of need.
Well, thank you very much. This is why I said earlier we need 2 trains running, because we can't do it all. We need so much there, and nowhere is this. 20 is the number of each day that we have a veteran committing suicide. PTSD affects that. I work very closely with them, as do my staff on that, and I commend you and hope that we do more. Did you want to make a closing statement now?
This has been a terrific, really terrific panel. I want to give each one of you another minute to get into the record and tell David and I something you may have thought, gee, I wish I could have gotten it in the conversation. Mr. Webb, you had something earlier I cut you off on. So we'll just, with a bit of a heads up, Ms. Maghr, go down the line. If there's one other thing, we'll put our minute on the clock for each one of you. And anything else you want to get in the record?
Sure. Let me start with what I just say. When people come to my food bank and ask me, how's it going? We are doing a booming business, and we do not want to be doing a booming business. There are more than 800,000 people in our community who are turning to us for need, and the face of people we're serving might surprise you. Increasingly, the people that we serve in our community and the people who are hungry in America, they're people who do everything right. They are people with jobs. They are people who are sending their children to school. There are people who, despite all of their best efforts, they need that additional assistance, and that's what SNAP does. So the opportunity to protect SNAP, the opportunity to look at other critical nutrition programs. We haven't talked very much about CSFP, but it's a program that's on the front lines of making sure that the older adults in our community have food. And also the importance of the TFAP program. We are so grateful for the increase that we received in the 2014 Farm Bill, but having the additional dollars for storage and distribution make it possible for great organizations to continue to do this work. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Green-Patton?
Thank you. Again, I am a proud past product or benefactor of the SNAP program, and we need to make sure that people like myself and people that will receive the program or receive the benefits of it, they're not caught up in the bureaucracy of just trying to say, I want to feed my family. It is a trampoline. I know some people don't feel like it is. I think people look at us and they say, oh, you want to stay on there your whole life, and that's definitely not the case. We just want a moment to be able to feed our family and get back to doing what we do as Americans. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Coons?
To pick up Mr. Scott's metaphor about the two trains running, we have done some of the two trains running, and I think that is wonderful. But I also want to point out that what we're talking about today, these kind of partnerships, this is more like a team of horses. We're not competing and we're not working independently, we're working together in tandem. And we have yet to see and evaluate what those partnerships, what those teams can do. On this panel, there are 3 doctors, I believe there are at least 6 veterans. You have people from the public sector, the private sector, all these different areas of expertise. That is what the community partner program is, and that is what several of our partnerships are. We bring people with all different types of expertise to the table alongside the government, and funding for that through social innovation funds, through the Hunger Free Communities line item that has been previously zeroed out, and all kinds of other ways the federal government can continue to create and improve and evaluate these public-private partnerships would aid us in our work.
All right. Thank you. Ms. Ender?
Mm-hmm. In regards to seniors, I'd just like to say that everyone ages very, very differently. And so, you know, you can have somebody that is in their 60s and physically they can't do things that somebody in their 80s could do. And then, you know, mentally the same sort of comparison. And we have an employment program in our agency, and we help those that want to get back into the workforce. But there are seniors that cannot do that for whatever reason. And seniors are a little different because, you know, than the rest of the population, oftentimes because they're on a fixed income. It doesn't grow that much, and they can't go get a second job or something like that. So they can be under tremendous stress when we see them. They can be crying, they can be angry, they can be very frustrated, they can be, and when you get under stress and you aren't eating well and maybe you haven't been able to purchase your meds and you're not taking those on a regular basis, you need assistance, you need help, and I think that's where the community partnerships are really, really important.
Yeah, thank you. Mr. Webb.
Thank you, Chairman. We strongly support the existence of SNAP because of the individuals we serve and the need, the safety net that's been described. We can't do our work without that baseline. But we do believe, like Ms. Maghr said, that we should be working ourselves out of a job. So to Mr. Scott's point earlier, it should be a partnership that allows us to test ideas, test innovation that can be scaled up, has measurable impact, and ultimately moves individuals from the situation where they need the safety net so that we can be in a place where when they use that safety net and they bounce from the safety net to the trampoline, they have some place to land. And the ways that we believe we've seen this done well is around social innovation, social enterprise that may require the team building and the collaboration up front and the upfront investment, but long term is a community-owned, community-led project that we can step away from and leave in the community for long term.
Thank you, Mr. Webb. Mr. Scott for a closing statement.
I just really want to commend you for putting this panel together and this hearing for several important reasons. We are a rich nation. We are the most powerful nation, and we should not rest with any soul in this country, any child, any person going hungry. And to you panelists, when I hear your testimony, what you're doing, I'm reminded of what Jesus Christ himself said. When the disciples asked him, "What is it you would have me to do?" He said, "Go and feed the hungry and love your neighbor as yourself." That you all are doing. God bless you.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. I want to, again, thank our panelists. I've been around this place for a while, and this has been one of the best, quite frankly, group of 5 presenters that we've had. I want the world to know that you're the example of the spokesman for hundreds and thousands of other agencies across this nation that are taking the bull by the horns themselves. They're not waiting on government. They're not waiting on anybody else. They're just saying, we see a problem, and we need to fix it. And that can-do spirit across this panel is quite evident. I want to thank you for being a part of that and the partners in this effort. This is a partnership where no one, in spite of some of the comments, no one is talking about doing away with SNAP. We want it to be better. We want it to work for the participants. We want it to work for the taxpayer. And that's the purpose of this multi-month review, is to get it right, to try to figure out what the right policies are. How can we make these things work? I visited my own food bank in Odessa. It covers about 17 counties. At the time I was there, the unemployment rate in Midland and Odessa, in that area, was 3% or less. Think about that, 3%. So I'm thinking this food bank is not doing much. They just kind of hanging out, because at that rate, everybody who has a job, everybody who wants a job has a job, and this is really, the boom was on. It was stunning to me to find out that their deliveries had gone from 3 million pounds to 5 million pounds during that time frame. And it's like, that is counterintuitive. I don't understand how that could happen. Well, what's happening is, because of the boom that came in and the thousands of people came to the community, housing costs soared well beyond the standard that you would think a family would have to be able to handle. And so on both ends of the barbell, the working poor and the elderly, because of fixed incomes and the impact, they were having to pay so much more for their housing and rent that they had cut their food budgets out. And so the deliveries to those two groups had skyrocketed. The group in the middle, the barbell, the rod, they're doing great. 3% unemployment, and they're taking good care of themselves. So it was eye-opening to me to visit, and I'm going to encourage all of our members to visit their food banks, to visit on the ground, go see the folks that are trying to take care of business and make that happen. I was disappointed that, particularly, Ms. Ender, that you didn't mention the role of families, particularly with the elderly. I've got a 86-year-old mother. She just turned 86, and she's stunningly proud of that. But she's begun to start that process where she's no longer fully capable for herself. But families have a role that I don't think got discussed this morning. Maybe not on purpose, but I do see many instances where families have not taken up their responsibilities to care for the folks that the immediate family, and we need to continue to highlight that and help people understand that is vitally important as a part of this process. I'm also disappointed to learn in my I visited Jane Long Elementary School in Midland 2 weeks ago to talk about the breakfast program and the lunch program. The coordinator there for the school district also coordinates the summer program, where children who are in daycare programs and other activities get help, those who need it. Apparently, the YMCA, the National Y, has, in cooperation with Ms. Obama and others, have developed standards for those programs that they cannot meet. And so this summer, the Midland Y, which has always been a great partner in that summer partner program where you have a coordinator that goes to the various delivery agencies, they will be out of the program because they can't participate. And there'll be 200 kids this summer who won't get the kind of nutrition help during the summer between school that they would have otherwise got. So that's a problem where government's interfered with the delivery of the private sector. So this has been a terrific experience for David and I and the rest of the panel. I want to thank each one of you again for coming and sharing with us some important information, and it's helping us move along in this, what I believe is going to be a 2-year review of the SNAP program. So under the rules of the committee, today's record will remain open for an additional 10 calendar days to receive additional material and supplementary written responses from the witnesses to any question posed by a member. This hearing of the Committee on Agriculture is now adjourned. Thank you.